Hey, Slater Crusaders, America's the greatest country in the world. Thank you for being here. Remember the riots this summer? And the names we always heard, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Jacob Blake, and the riots and people burning cities to the ground. Every time we're told one thing about those stories, it's never, in the end, it's never what we're told, right? We're told one thing about these events, and we create these perceptions, and the perceptions are rarely, if ever, reality. I want to talk about why that happens. Why are people freaking out at things? Why all this chaos? Why all the outrage? It's because people have wildly inaccurate perceptions of reality. So what's the true story? That's what we're going to talk about in this segment. One of the missions of this show is to destroy these inaccurate perceptions. We make them because our brains need to make sense of the world, right? So we make things up. And it doesn't matter if they're right or wrong, it doesn't matter. We feel good just if it's a thing. The problem with it is, when we're wrong, and we almost always are, the perception we have makes us feel a certain way. And when we feel a certain way, we act a certain way. And that could be to each other, and it can also be like we feel a certain way, so we vote a certain way, and then bad legislation gets passed. And all these bad things over here, bad legislation, chaos, outrage, all the rest, if you trace it back, it goes back to the inaccurate perception in the beginning. So this is what we need to rein in. We need to realign our perceptions to reality. We need to know the true story. As Henry David Thoreau said, this is one of my favorite quotes from Henry David Thoreau. He said, "There's thousands hacking at the branches of evil for every one who strikes the root." On this show, we strike the root. So let's rebuke some of those perceptions. It's important for your health, by the way. Let me say this quick before we go. It's important for your health. Byron Katie is this like guru person. I'm hesitant to mention her name because I don't want to be like attached to her because I don't know too much about her, but she's got this process that if you're suffering from anxiety and fear, which so many people are, the first question she asks is it true? This thing you're telling yourself over and over that's causing you to freak out, is it true? And usually the answer is no, but even if someone's like, no, it's definitely true, the next question is, can you absolutely know it's true? And the person says, oh, well, no, I mean, I guess I can't absolutely know it's true. So many freakouts, so much fear, so much anxiety and outrage in the media today. And 99% of these things could be diffused by simply asking, is it true? So this is a great practice that I just want to suggest we all have, is that when you feel yourself feeling something strongly, find out where that's coming from. What premise is that feeling based off of? And then just ask yourself, is it true? Is this thing I've been told true? Is this perception I have true? Okay, so let's spend some time debunking some of these perceptions. There was a question that was asked to a bunch of people. The question was, how many unarmed black people were killed by police in 2019? Okay, so that's the question I have for you. How many unarmed black men, how many unarmed black men were killed by police in 2019? Go ahead, take a guess. What do you think? So they asked that question to a bunch of people, and they put them into groups. So first it was people who answered about 10, about 100 black men, about 1,000, about 10,000, and then more than 10,000. And we have a graph here. So this is, they broke down the results based off of, it's kind of hard to read, let me walk through it. So they broke down the results based off of political orientation. So on the far left there is very liberal, and then liberal people, moderate people, conservative people, and very conservative people. This is their perceptions. And then in each section there, the blue, so the blue graph, the blue bar is about 10 people, and then the orange is about 100, and then about 1,000, about 10,000, and more than 10,000. Okay, so let's interpret some of this data here, guys, if you can just keep this up. So among very liberal people, if you guys can throw it up one more time. So among very liberal people, 62, so that's the group on the far left, 62% of very liberal people said that between 100 and 1,000 unarmed black men were killed by police last year. So that means if you asked a very liberal person how many people were killed by police, how many unarmed black men, that some of them would say, oh, I don't know, like 800, maybe 900 unarmed black men were killed by police last year. Among even liberal people, 66% said between 100 and 1,000. Let me give you one other interpretation of this data. Among liberals, 44% of liberals guessed 1,000 or more. So that means you go up to a liberal on the street and 44% of them are gonna say, how many unarmed black men were killed by police last year? I don't know, 2,000? Maybe 1,500, 2,000, maybe 1,000 black men, I don't know. So what's your guess? Want to know the answer? 13. Washington Post, they have a database, they say 13. There's another group called Mapping Police Violence, they say 27. There's different definitions on what unarmed is and all that stuff. Let's take the middle, let's say it's 20. Let's say the answer is 20 unarmed black men were killed by police last year. About half of liberals in this country think it's over 1,000. That is unacceptable. That is an unacceptable divorce from reality. You cannot, we cannot have people walking around with a perception that over 1,000 unarmed black men were killed last year by police, and the answer is 20. Like, you can't walk around with a perception that has nothing to do with reality at all. This is a huge deal. If you're walking around thinking that over 1,000 unarmed black men are killed by police each year, then, well, and I guess every outrage we've seen these last years is justified and makes sense, right? If 10,000, that was one of the answers, right? There's like 8% of liberals think over 10,000 black men are killed by police every year. If that's the case, then yeah, burning down buildings maybe makes sense. All the outrage and freaking out and fear and anxiety makes sense. LeBron James says he's terrified to go outside. Okay, so if 10,000 unarmed black men were killed every year by police, then maybe that fear would make sense. But it's not true. Therefore, your fear makes no sense. Your fear is unwarranted. And I know this is not a good, like, oh, but how you feel is, it's all about how you feel. Yeah, stop feeling that way. Because the reason you feel that way, like that's our modern psychobabble philosophy today, is how you feel is most important. And no one can ever question how you feel. And honestly, I'm not really questioning how you feel, because it would make sense. If you think 1,000 unarmed black men are killed every year by police, then yeah, your feelings are justified. I'm questioning the premise. Like, what's your perspective that's making you feel that way? The perspective's wrong. Your perception is wrong. So if we change your perception, then you should no longer feel that way. Make sense? If someone's walking around and thinks, so if there's 1,000 black people are killed a day, that's unarmed black men by police every day, that's 3 a day. It's 3 murders by police officers a day. 3 every day. 3 unarmed black men killed a day. And it's actually 1 every 3 weeks. Those are very different. So the question for that liberal, once you tell them the truth, is, are you going to change your inaccurate perception and embrace the truth and then feel differently about the situation and then act differently, vote differently even? Or are you so addicted to the outrage that you can't let go of the lie? And then we have to ask, what forces are at play that would even give someone the perception that over 1,000 unarmed black men are killed by police every year? And that's because there's just a steady drumbeat from the media for this last year at least, that it's just open season on blacks. That's the term, it's open season, random killing of black people every single day. Amazing. And these wrong perceptions lead to inaccurate feelings, which lead to bad action. And again, then bad voting and bad laws. The bad personal action is people who are, again, afraid to go outside, afraid of police officers, afraid for your kids and their interaction with police officers. That fear is not based on reality. I got another one for you. The question was, okay, because people are going to say, listen, Slater, 20 unarmed black men is too many. And yes, I don't know the situations of each of those, right? Unarmed doesn't necessarily mean innocent or harmless or that police were not justified in, or, right? So I don't know the exact situations, but let's go with it, right? 20 are too many. So the question is, how many white people are killed by police officers compared to black people? So the question, that's the question. So of people killed by police officers, what percentage of them are black men? That's the question. Very liberal people say black people are 60% of those. We have that graph here too. 60% of people killed by police. Liberals say it's 56%, and conservatives say it's about 40%. And the answer is 25%. So everyone's way off again. So of people killed by police officers, 25% of them are black, not 60%, which means cops kill white people way more often. Now, since we're here talking about this, let's get to some truth. How many black people were killed last year from homicide? So remember, 20 unarmed black men killed by police. So how many black men are killed just by regular people? 8,600. That was last year, 2020. It's 1,000 more than 2019, or 7,500. So that is one black man killed per hour. 90% of those killed by other black people. None of them, that's not police officers, not white supremacists. So that New York Post article we just shared, the point of that article is, a lot of people walking around saying Black Lives Matter. Do they? To you, do they? Do they matter? Is that true? Because if they really did, I would think you would help change people's perception to the truth and align people's perceptions with reality. If you really thought Black Lives Matter, then you would tell people the true story. I gotta take a break. Next, I got 2 more perceptions to blow out of the water. One of them, you've heard this before about the study of resumes that are sent out, and they're the exact same, but some have white people's names and some have black people's names, and that's supposed to prove that we're a racist country. I want to talk about that study and debunk it coming up next. I want to give you a friendly reminder to please download our app. Super grateful that you're watching, however you're watching right now. Thanks for that. But just want to let you know that we have another option too, and that's your app on your smartphone. And it's totally free, and you can see everyone's right there. Easy interface, so simple to understand. Tomorrow we're doing a special on Bitcoin. That's not easy to understand. This app, very easy to understand and work through, and it's wonderful. So you can watch us and listen to us on the go. It works like, you don't need to even watch. You can close your phone and it just still plays in the background wherever you're going, wherever you're driving, etc. So you can please download that for free in the App Store. Just search for The First TV. Spread the word. Hey, Slater Crusaders. So let's work backwards again here. So people see the chaos that's happening out there in the world, and we're like, we got to stop this. And it's like, okay, but where's it coming from? Right? So we got to go back to the beginning and start striking the root before we can have anything to do with what we're seeing. What do I mean by chaos? It's not just riots, although that's the obvious example. Did you see what the Buffalo, New York school district is telling kindergartners? They're telling kindergartners, 5-year-olds, they need to be afraid of being killed by racist police and state-sanctioned violence, as they told them, and showing kindergartners video of dead black children saying this could be you. That is chaos. That's chaos. Meanwhile, only 20% of the kids in that district can read at grade level, but that's a different story. The anxiety, the outrage, those actions come from bad thoughts. Bad thoughts come from inaccurate perceptions. So if we want to stop the outrage, first of all, do you want to stop it? Do you want to stop the chaos and outrage? I guess some people don't, right? But if you do, then we got to get to the root and get people's perceptions back in line with reality. It's ours too. Right? So I want to give you another perception way off. This one's about race, and then we'll move to some other ones about money too. But the big one is that we are a racist country. And this ties into our guest coming up next as well. But this idea that we're a racist country and everyone is racist. One proof of that claim, that everyone's racist, one proof of that claim that the left uses is this job application study. And there's been many of these. Here's how it works. They'll send out fake resumes, fake applications. And they're the exact same, but half of them have white person sounding names like Carrie and Todd. And here's another study. So all these studies are very similar. Emily and Greg. And some of them have black person sounding names like Tanish and Kareen and Lakeisha and Jamal. And the claim is that white people will get a call back. Well, in this one particular study, they would send out 10 applications for one callback. All right, so you send out 10 applications with a white person name at the top. And for every 10 applications, they get one callback. So the question is, how many applications did the black resume, the black person's name resume, how many of those applications had to be sent out before they got a callback? Does that make sense? How many times did resumes with black sounding names had to be sent out before they got a callback for an interview? White liberals guessed 30 times. So if it took white people 10 times, it took the black applicants 30 times. So white liberals guessed 30, white moderates guessed 21 times, white conservatives guessed 18 times. And the white conservatives were the closest. The answer is 15. So for every 10 applications a white person sends out, they get a callback, but it took 15 applications for the black person to get a callback. Now, so the first point is people were way off. Right? White liberals thought it took 30, but it didn't take 30, it took 15. But then you're going to be saying, well, hold on, Slater, 15 is still more than 10. So that's still racism, right? If these job interviewers and business owners, if they're not going to accept or call back Jamal for an interview over Greg, that's still proof of racism, even if it's not as bad as liberals think it is. So what's the truth here? Here's the nuance to these studies that they don't tell you about. First name differentiation, first name differentiation makes a difference. But when they change the last names to historically black last names, then there's no difference. So if we do the same study again with the same resumes, except the name's different, but if we change the last name, so instead of it being Jamal, it's Chris, but it's Chris Jefferson or Chris Washington, then there's no difference in the number of callbacks with, Chris Slater, right? Does that make sense? So what that suggests is that it's not race, it's class difference. Someone may hesitate to interview someone named Lakeisha, but it's not because they're black, but because of class stereotypes that may come with that name. Because that same job interviewer has no problem interviewing a Chris Washington or a Chris Jefferson. Make sense? I think it's one of the greatest feelings ever when you hear something that sounds right? Like systemic racism, and here they give you this study, and they're like, look, see, racist. And you accept that, and you're like, okay, but then when you hear the truth, or you hear an alternate explanation of it, it's so refreshing to get the true story, isn't it? It feels so good. It's seriously one of my favorite feelings in life, is when you can really speak the truth into these perceptions. I got a few more minutes. Let me give you another one here. This is about money. There's a viral video going around. It's called Systemic Racism Explained. And it's a story of Jamal and some white kid name, right? So a black kid and a white kid and their life and how they experience systemic racism in their life. And it's this type of propaganda that is so convincing. And our teachers, I know they show it to kids without giving any other perspective and any other thoughtful analysis whatsoever. They just present it to them, and that's propaganda. So I just want to play one quick scene of this movie, of this clip. It's this section is about how this white kid's grandparents were able to buy homes and go to really good colleges that Jamal's parents were not able to, and the effect that that has on kids today. Here.
Kevin's grandparents, on the other hand, got a low-interest loan to buy their first house and get accepted into a handful of top universities, which traditionally only accepted white students. This opened up a wealth of opportunities that they were able to pass on to their kids and grandkids.
Money. I love the wads of money flowing from the grandkids to the kids. It's like just wads of cash. So the premise here is that rich people today inherited their wealth. And that's what people's perceptions are. And people's perceptions are way off when it comes to millionaires. The largest survey ever done of millionaires, I think they surveyed 10,000 millionaires. A couple things. First, it took 28 years of working for them to hit $1 million. 28 years. So their average age when they became a millionaire was 49. And there's a lot of young people whining about not being a millionaire. It doesn't happen overnight. Get to work. All right. If you've been in the workforce for 5 years, you got decades to go. All right. But the main thing here, the relevant thing here is 79% of millionaires did not receive any inheritance. If you ask people today, especially young people, what percentage of rich people inherited their money, they'd say 100%, 80, 90, 100%. And it's the exact opposite. 79% received no inheritance. Only 2% of millionaires came from upper income families, 80% came from middle income families. People have this perception that you're rich, and you pass your money down to your kids, and they're rich forever, and they pass that money down to their kids, and they're rich forever, and just the rich stay rich, and they're always rich, and they're never not rich, and no one else can ever join the club of the rich because there's this rigid class structure in concrete, and it is not true at all. I want to share a bunch of numbers here, and I know numbers are hard to count, but I'm going to try to do this as clearly as I can. The richest 1%, okay, the rich 1%, 12% of Americans will, for at least 1 year, get into that richest 1%. Isn't that amazing? We think that 1% is the 1%, and they're always the 1%, and they'll always be the 1%, and no one else can ever get into that 1% because that's the 1%. But 12% of Americans will get into that 1% for at least a year of their life. The richest 5% of people, 39% of Americans will get into that elite club for at least 1 year of their life. That's amazing. 39% of Americans will at one point in their life be in the richest 5%? That's not a rigid class structure. The richest 20% of Americans, 73% of Americans will at 1 year in their life at least be in that top 20%. That's amazing. Also, let me throw this one your way. That richest 1%. How much income do you think you need to get in that top 1%? Again, I bet if you go and you ask people on the street, you ask them, how much income does the top 1% have? I would guess $20 million. I think you need to make $20 million. That would be my guess. You got to make $20 million a year in order to be in that top 1%, right? So it's different in every state. Alabama, to get in that richest 1%, $300,000 a year. That's your income. If you make $300,000 a year, you're in the 1% of Alabama. And you're like, oh, well, that's Alabama, Slater. California, I think California would be the richest, right? It's $500,000. That's no chump change, don't get me wrong, but that's all it takes to get in the richest 1%, $500,000. Connecticut is the highest, $700,000 a year. So if you have $700,000 a year income, you're in the richest 1% of Connecticut. Most states are like $300,000, $400,000 a year to get in the richest 1%. Crazy, right? One last thing about money. The richest 1%, right? People who do make it to the top, only 0.6%. So like a tiny, tiny fraction of people who make it to the top 1% are there for 10 straight years. 0.6%, which means people are coming and going, entering the club, leaving that richest 1% club every year. That's an amazing thing. That's a wonderful thing. So again, people's perceptions of money and income in America is that everything's set in concrete and we have this rock solid caste system where the rich are the rich and the poor are the poor and no one's ever moving in and out of anything ever. And that is not true. But again, that perception, that raw, inaccurate perception creates envy, feelings, envy, greed, anger, resentment, bitterness. Those feelings create bad action. Whether it's voting poorly, and then bad policy or bad interpersonal reaction with other people, right? But those perceptions are wrong. They're way off. I gotta go here, but let me share this real quick story, just the most extreme example ever. Cornelius Vanderbilt. Cornelius Vanderbilt passed away in 1877. He was one of the richest men in the world, the railroad tycoon. He left his oldest son $2.1 billion, which was the largest amount. He left other amounts to his other kids as well. That son doubled that fortune over the next 10 years and then gave it to his kids, so Cornelius's grandkids. Cornelius's grandkids spent all of it. All of it. Within 30 years after the death of Cornelius Vanderbilt, 1877, within 30 years, not a single member of his family was among the richest people in the United States. 100 years later, so 1973, 120 of Cornelius Vanderbilt's families, descendants, gathered at Vanderbilt University, okay? 120 family members. Not a single millionaire in the group. He was the richest man in the world. And 30 years later and 100 years later, nothing. It's gone. Could you imagine being a descendant of Vanderbilt now and you're like working a 9 to 5? You're like working at the local estate farm and you're like, my great-great-great-grandpa was the richest man in the world. The largest fortune in the world, and not one millionaire remains in his family of 120 descendants. What in the world? So where'd all the money go? Or why was it gone? Keeping up with the Joneses. They just spent it all. There was one, Alva Vanderbilt. She married Cornelius's grandson, and she was not accepted into the social elite of New York City, and she desperately wanted to be. The Astors had this big party every year, and she was never invited. So in order to get into the social elite club, she built the biggest mansion in New York City. Took 3 years to build this thing. Today it would have cost $70 million. I think it's right on Fifth Avenue. And still that didn't work. So she had her own party where she invited 1,000 of the richest families. It cost $6 million to throw this party. Finally it worked, and she entered into the social elite of New York City, and it only cost her $75 million. And within a few years, they tore the mansion down to the ground. The first of these Vanderbilt mansions were built in 1882. 1882, the first one was demolished in 1914, and by 1947, they were all rubble. Except for the Biltmore, which is still around. That's it. Isn't that amazing? And then Alva and her husband, they got a divorce. So they lost all their money and they were miserable. This is the son who inherited all the money in the first place, Cornelius' son. He says, I have my house, my pictures, I think he means paintings, and my horses, and so do they. I can have steam yacht if I want to, but it would give me no pleasure. I don't care for it. And here he's talking about his neighbor. My neighbor, isn't worth 100th part as much as I am, but he has more of the real pleasures of life than I have. His house is as comfortable as mine, even if it didn't cost as much. His team, I think he means team of horses, so like cars today, is about as good as mine. His opera box is next to mine. His health is better than mine, and he'll probably outlive me. And he can trust his friends. Being the richest person in the world has brought me nothing but anxiety. He was the richest man in the world when he said that. So my point today is specifically regarding money. Income mobility is as alive and well as ever. People think it doesn't exist, and it's never existed more. You just got to play the game. Make yourself useful, be frugal, save, live below your means, serve other people. The recipe still works. Big picture, my point is, question every perception that the left tells you. Question every perception. When you feel something, anger, envy, greed, whatever, go back one step. Be like, oh, what is that based off of? And is it true? Don't buy the lies. Always search for the true story. Mike Slater, spread the word. Hey, Slater Crusaders, the theme of today's show has been about perception. and how inaccurate perceptions lead to certain feelings, bad feelings, and those bad feelings lead to bad action. So if you want to change the action of yourself or people in this country, then we got to get back to the inaccurate perceptions. Now, there's a lot of people out there trying to change your perceptions, and especially our kids. We're wrapping up Black History Month, that is February. And Black History Month has been hijacked by Black Lives Matter. It's turned into Black Lives Matter Month, which is a whole new can of worms, which leads us to our next guest, who wrote a wonderful article in The Federalist called "Americans Deserve True Black History, Not Lies from the 1619 Project." Christopher Arps is here. He's a member of the Project 21 Black Leadership Network. Mr. Arps, how are you, sir?
I'm doing great, Mike. Thanks for having me on today.
Man, really good to talk to you. I want to make sure we're all on the same page. How do you define the 1619 Project? You're walking down the street, someone doesn't know what it is, you got a couple seconds. How do you define it?
Well, I define the 1619 Project as basically a propaganda tool by the New York Times and leftists to change the history of America. The basic premise of the 1619 Project is that the American Revolution was not a revolution fought for freedom for the colonists. It was fought to preserve the institution of slavery because Britain was thinking about outlawing it. That's basically it in a nutshell.
Now, that's factually inaccurate. And they almost admit it now, which is weird. Like the 1619 people almost admit that it's not even true. They just they cover it as being like, oh, well, it could be, or it's like, right? Have you seen that?
Well, Mike, I had a chance, I'm with Project 21, and Project 21 is a shareholder of the New York Times, which allows us to participate in their shareholder meetings. And last year, I asked a question of the publisher of the New York Times, Pinch Sulzberger, about the 1619 Project, about all the fallacies and all the lies that were connected to it. And his answer basically was, well, we know there's a lot of problems with it. We know there's controversy, but as long as it's spurring a discussion on race, then we're good with it. That was basically his answer, Mike.
Yeah, that's so awful, because what is the result of it? If this propaganda is pumped into our kids' brains, how do they come out of it differently?
Well, they come out of it differently is because they don't have a pride in their country. And I think if you feel that your ancestors are oppressed and that the neck of the state and of white people are continually on your neck, then there's no possibility for you to achieve in this country. And so why even try? And I think it's just a big boot on the neck of African-American achievement in this country, especially with our school children.
I think I don't want to be dramatic, and I don't want to put you in a bad spot here, Christopher.
Sure.
I think it's like a child abuse. I can't think of a worse thing to tell a child other than you're a victim, you're oppressed, everyone hates you, there's nothing you can do about it. There's no way you can accomplish anything or achieve because the system is against you. Like, what a horrific thing to tell a child.
It's horrific to tell a child that, but also it becomes generational. If you've been told that, then you're going to tell your children that, and then you're going to tell, the succeeding generations. So it just becomes a never-ending cycle of poverty.
So what should we be doing instead? What's the Christopher Arps message of truth?
Well, I think that we don't want to whitewash the history of this country of slavery and oppression and discrimination. That's not what I propose when I talk about Black History Month. I think it should be talked about, but I'd like to see us stress more of the accomplishments of African Americans and to show that we can make it in this country, that we've been here 400 years, but according to the 1619 Project, and it's possible to succeed. And there are plenty of examples that we can show through Black History Month of people coming up from very bad circumstances and making it in life. I'm from St. Louis, Missouri. I was raised here. I wasn't born here. And George Washington Carver, was born and raised in Missouri. And we see all of the accomplishments that he had, and he came from a background of being a slave.
It's amazing. We know, maybe no one knows these stories anymore. I wonder if our kids know these stories anymore. I don't know if you saw this video the other day. It was a teacher, a middle school teacher, and he brought up Helen Keller and the people said, "Oh, Helen Keller, the Nazi killer guy." And then the teacher said, "What's D-Day?" And the person goes, "Who, the rapper?" And they said, "What's Pearl Harbor?" And the person goes, "You mean the bridge?" Like, so I don't know if our kids know anything about anything, but I was going to ask you, the reason I said this is because I was going to ask you, we know, you and I at least know, Martin Luther King and Frederick Douglass and some of the big names, and Washington Carver is a great one. Give me another story, one that we were not taught in schools that you wish this person was a household name.
Well, I'll tell you, one of them, and like I said, I'm from St. Louis, so I like to highlight African-American achievers from St. Louis. One is the first African-American millionaire was a woman named C.J. Walker. And she started a hair care business with perms and oils and things that you put on her hair. She became the first African-American millionaire in this country. She became a great philanthropist. And it's extraordinary to have, especially a female and an African-American, achieve such great success in the early part of the 20th century. I think that's a phenomenal story that will motivate all people.
Of course. So here's the question. Let's say you take the same kid and they live in parallel universes, Christopher, and one of these kids is taught the 1619 Project and victimization and oppression, and the other is taught the story of C.J. Walker and overcoming and perseverance and all the rest. How are those two lives different?
Well, I think they're going to be different because one of those children is going to be steeped in negativity, and the other one is going to be steeped in positivity. You know, that was similar to my background. My parents were college educated. My father started a successful business while I was growing up. In the summer times, instead of, being out, getting in trouble and messing around, my parents had me working in the stores. And I learned such valuable life skills of how to talk to people, how to be a salesman, how to have a work ethic, the great pride that you have every Friday getting a paycheck and cashing that check, knowing that comes from the fruit of your labor. I hated that experience growing up. I wanted to be out messing around, in the summer, but I'm so glad that I have that experience today.
Two quick questions. What is your message to, let's say, the black leaders, whatever that even means, like the people behind the 1619 Project or the Black Lives Matter activists who are pushing this stuff? What do you say to them face to face? And then the second part is, what do you say to the well-intentioned teacher who's embracing this stuff because they want to be tolerant and nice and all that?
Yeah, I'd say first of all, what I would say to the Black Lives Matter people that are supporting the 1619 Project and propaganda like that, the first message that I have as being a conservative African American to my liberal African American family, friends, is that I'm not your enemy. That even though we have different political backgrounds, we still have the same goal in mind, which is to see African American people advance. We just have two different views of going about it. Your method has a 50-plus year track record of failure. Our record is, to paraphrase Donald Trump, what have we got to lose? Let's try something different. Regarding the teachers, I would tell them is, look, get rid of your white guilt. You are not helping these black students by making them feel like they are oppressed. Tell them the truth. Tell them they can make it in this country. I tell you one thing that my parents always taught me, that I could achieve anything that I wanted in this life as long as I went to school, worked hard, and did what I needed to do. But they always told me this one thing, and they said, Chris, you're still going to have one strike against you always because you're black. But they did not tell me that in order for me to feel oppressed or for me to feel like a victim. They were giving me a reality check that this is how life is going to be. But they never let me use that as an excuse. Never.
Christopher Arps, nationalcenter.org, is that where we can find Project 21?
Yes, nationalcenter.org. That's where you'll find Project 21 and a lot of other contributors who come on great shows like yours and write editorials for the Federalist and for other publications.
That's great. Christopher, can we talk again, brother?
Please, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
Man. Well done. Really good to talk to you. Appreciate you. All right, Mike Slater. We got tomorrow's special is about cryptocurrency. Coming up next, we'll get a little preview of that with an expert in Bitcoin. Coming up next. True story. Mike Slater. Spread the word. Hey, Slater Crusaders. So tomorrow, our special is about cryptocurrency and what is it? I'll tell you this fact. If you invested $100 in Bitcoin in 2010, 2011, $100, you would have $50 million today. Okay, so like what in the world is this thing? How is it made? All that stuff. So we're gonna talk about that on tomorrow's special. Look forward to that. Our next guest, I wanna get a little insight on this from him, but he's created an app that solves another problem as well. So let's talk to Jad Singh, who's the creator of Vid. Jag, how are you, brother?
I'm good, thanks. Yourself?
Man, good to talk to you. So let's tell me what your app is first. What is Vid?
Vid is a social media platform that pays all users every single day that they use the app.
How? Yeah. How do you pay them, and what does someone have to do in order to get paid?
Sure. So we pay them in our digital currency Vi, and all they have to do is use the app. So if we think about Facebook, the prevalent social media platforms, we generate a lot of value for them. What are we worth to them? Around a few $1,000s each user is actually worth to Facebook. And we think that business model of social media is broken. This sort of harvest your data, hit you with ads, monetize your time and attention. We think we as users should be getting something back. And we think that's the future of social media.
I love that identifying of a major problem. I've realized it way too late until recently that I'm providing content for Zuckerberg to sell for nothing. This is stupid of me. So I'm glad you do that. But what is this? And this leads us to cryptocurrency. What is this currency you pay in?
So we pay in Vi. It stands for value income. And it's basically the value of the network and the value of all of us together in a digital currency. And it's also the advertiser credit for how advertisers advertise on the platform. So it's capturing all the value of the ads in a digital currency and giving that currency to the users.
Okay, so this gets into a bigger digital currency conversation, which I'm excited to have. So can you only get Vi via the app? Like is Vi a currency that only exists within this ecosystem, or can you use it other places too?
Sure, so at the moment it exists only within Vid, but in the summer we're launching a debit card. So you can spend it in stores and wherever you like, wherever you can spend dollars or pounds.
Give me the grand vision. So this goes through the roof. This is the future. Give us like 10 years from now. How does the system work?
We kind of think that social took a left turn, and this sort of decentralized version of social is how it should have always been. That using us as hamsters and just addicting us and kind of monetizing our time and attention is not how it should have worked. We thought we're getting something for free, we're getting a free product, we're getting a cool experience. But now 10, 15 years later, we're all waking up to, you know what? Maybe there's another way, maybe that isn't how it should have worked. So we think the grand vision is all social kind of moves to this business model of paying everyone for their time and attention.
Do you think different socials that pop up? Because I wonder, first of all, do you think Facebook and Twitter and Instagram would eventually figure this out too and start doing a similar thing? Or are they already so built in their system that they won't change it?
I think if users kind of all migrate and say, you know what, we're only going to use platforms that pay us, then yeah, they'll be forced to adopt some sort of similar systems.
Wow, this is amazing. This is amazing. But I get it, but I don't get it. I don't see. So what I would get paid in this digital currency, and this is a bigger question about, what is currency? So what is it? What is Vi? How do I think about this?
I mean, what is money, right? It's just.
I know.
it's an agreed, I agree to give you this and you agree, we both agree that it has value and you're going to give me a loaf of bread or a pint of milk. And there's a larger conversation kind of happening in society now around what is money and kind of money's being reimagined. And if we think about, I like to think about money as the oldest network effects, the original network effects product. And social media is the network effects product that's kind of reached similar scale. So we think the combination of the two, money and social combined, is kind of a very interesting social experiment and potentially a great business.
So I get this V or Vi, how do you pronounce it?
Yeah, value.
Vi. Okay, so I get this, that's right. So I get this Vi, and what do I do with it? Let's just talk in the next year time frame.
Sure.
What do I do with my Vi?
Right now, you can take it to a listed exchange like Liquid, where we're listed. You can cash it out for dollars, move those dollars to your bank account. So it's got a real dollar value today.
Okay.
In the 4 months in the summer, we're launching our debit card, like I said. So you can you'll earn it and you'll spend it. So for normal users, they won't even really realize there's crypto underneath. They'll just realize that I'm being paid for social. Like I should have always been, potentially.
I'm so impressed that you recognize a problem with social media, and created a new thing. That's awesome. And it fits into the whole theme of decentralizing, which is where we obviously need to be going with pretty much everything. Do you agree with that? Maybe you can explain decentralization. What is decentralization, big picture?
So one of the things that blockchain can give us is this kind of giving value back to the user. The other is decentralization and the removal of censorship and this kind of middleman, right? So if we look at what happened recently with President Trump being removed from Twitter, or the GameStop and all those Wall Street Bets forums being removed, it all comes down to a select group of people making decisions for the wider populace. And then there's a lot of political discussions around this. Should this be regulated? Should this be the case? Should they be allowed to make these decisions for us? And what blockchain kind of enables is removing that middleman. So it's just peer-to-peer. It's straight. I'm uploading to the chain, and you, if you like, can pull down that content straight from the chain without the middleman, and no one can kind of stop that. And I think the tech isn't quite there yet for that. I think we're still a few years away, but that is definitely the ultimate vision and the ultimate where we think we're headed.
Yeah, that's so exciting. That's awesome. All right, brother. I appreciate it. How can people download this app?
It's available on iOS and the Google Play Store. Just search Vid.
Okay. Vid. Jag Singh.
Yeah.
Thanks, man. Keep up.
Thank you.
Appreciate you. Hope this is a great success. I just love people thinking about this stuff, right? And solving this problem, seeing problems, identifying them, and solving them, even if I don't understand it at all. And that's tomorrow's special. I'm ready for my brain to be totally Bitcoin. What is it? Where do you get it? How do you mine it? What do we do with it? Why is it 50 million, about 50,000 a bit? What are we even talking about here? That's all tomorrow's special. Have a great rest of your day. True story. Mike Slater. Spread the word.